Life, in all its complexity, begins at the most basic level, the cell. Every living organism, from the smallest bacterium to the largest whale, is made up of cells. These tiny structures are the building blocks of life, performing essential functions that allow organisms to grow, reproduce, and respond to their environment. In fact, the cell is often referred to as the basic unit of life because it carries out all the processes necessary for survival. All cells are surrounded by a structure called the cell membrane, which, much like the walls of a house, serves as a clear boundary between the cell's internal and external environments. The cell membrane is sometimes also referred to as the plasma membrane. Cell membranes are based on a framework of fat-based molecules called phospholipids, which physically prevent water-loving or hydrophilic substances from entering or escaping the cell. These membranes are also studded with proteins that serve various functions. Some of these proteins act as gatekeepers, determining what substances can and cannot cross the membrane. Others function as markers, identifying the cell as part of the same organism or as foreign. Still others work like fasteners, binding cells together so they can function as a unit. Yet other membrane proteins serve as communicators, sending and receiving signals from neighboring cells and the environment, whether friendly or alarming. Within this membrane, a cell's interior environment is water-based. Called cytoplasm, this liquid environment is packed full of cellular machinery and structural elements. A cell's cytoplasm is home to numerous functional and structural elements. These elements exist in the form of molecules and organelles. Major classes of intracellular organic molecules include nucleic acids, proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, all of which are essential to the cell's functions. Nucleic acids are the molecules that contain and help express a cell's genetic code. There are two major classes of nucleic acids, deoxyribonucleic acid or DNA and ribonucleic acid or RNA. DNA is the molecule that contains all of the information required to build and maintain the cell. RNA has several roles associated with the expression of the information stored in DNA. Of course, nucleic acids alone aren't responsible for the preservation and expression of genetic material. Cells also use proteins to help replicate the genome and accomplish the profound structural changes that underlie cell division. Proteins are a second type of intracellular organic molecule. These substances are made from chains of smaller molecules called amino acids, and they serve a variety of functions in the cell, both catalytic and structural. Carbohydrates, the starches and sugars in cells, are another important type of organic molecule. Simple carbohydrates are used for the cell's immediate energy demands, whereas complex carbohydrates serve as intracellular energy stores. Complex carbohydrates are also found on a cell's surface, where they play a crucial role in cell recognition. Finally, lipids or fat molecules are components of cell membranes, both the plasma membrane and various intracellular membranes. They are also involved in energy storage as well as relaying signals within cells and from the bloodstream to a cell's interior. Some cells also feature orderly arrangements of molecules called organelles. Similar to the rooms in a house, these structures are partitioned off from the rest of a cell's interior by their own intracellular membrane. Categories of cells. Rather than grouping cells by their size or shape, scientists typically categorize them by how their genetic material is packaged. If the DNA within a cell is not separated from the cytoplasm, then that cell is a prokaryote. All known prokaryotes, such as bacteria and archaea, are single cells. In contrast, if the DNA is partitioned off in its own membrane-bound room called the nucleus, then that cell is a eukaryote. Researchers hypothesize that all organisms on Earth today originated from a single cell that existed some 3.5 to 3.8 billion years ago. This original cell was likely little more than a sack of small organic molecules and RNA-like material that had both informational and catalytic functions. Over time, the more stable DNA molecule evolved to take over the information storage function, whereas proteins with a greater variety of structures than nucleic acids took over the catalytic functions. The cell was first discovered and named by Robert Hooke in 1665. He remarked that it looked strangely similar to cellula, or small rooms which monks inhabited, thus deriving the name. However, what Robert Hooke actually saw was the dead cell walls of plant cells, specifically cork, as they appeared under the microscope. Robert Hooke was the one who first used the word cell after looking at cork with a microscope. The first man to witness a live cell under a microscope was Anton van Leeuwenhoek, who in 1674 described the algae Spirogyra. He discovered a variety of living creatures in pond water, blood, and other samples. Matthias Jakob Schleiden and Theodor Schwann, who, working together, established the foundational principles of cell theory, with Schleiden focusing on plant cells and Schwann on animal cells. The two scientists clearly stated in 1839 that cells are the elementary particles of organisms in both plants and animals, and recognized that some organisms are unicellular and others multicellular. Rudolf Virchow. He later added to the cell theory by stating that all cells come from pre-existing cells with his famous phrase, omnis cellula e cellula. All these were made possible by the invention of the microscope. Let's explore microscopy in the next video.